Thank you so much for joining me. Sorry to keep you waiting. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe, and for the next 25 minutes or so, going to be talking to you about a host of new features being brought to the next versions of Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, and Character Animator. So we're a little over time, gotta jump into these. We're gonna start right here in Premiere Pro and talk to you first about a couple of the new additions that we're bringing to Lumetri Color. Inside the Lumetri Color panel now, you will have the ability to very easily, in a Photoshop way, layer multiple instances of the Lumetri Color effect. Now, you've always been able to do this, but you had to do it inside of the Effects Controls panel. And if you take a look here as we start to scroll and scrub down here, if you've got multiple modules open inside of the Effects Controls panel here, it begins to get very, very confusing as to where you are, having to scrub and scroll through all of these things. And this was not an ideal way of working, and we heard this from you. So now, if you look inside of Lumetri in this next version, just next to the global effects bypass, which we added in the April update, you will see that you now have the ability to add multiple Lumetri effects as stacked layers. So in the case of this first one here, our Alexa LUT layer, this is where we simply added a basic input LUT for this footage, which was shot by Silbasalts, whom you may have seen earlier speaking on stage today. This is sort of our pre-grade layer. And then on the next layer here, which is titled Hue versus Sat, I'm going to rename this one to Selective Color. And here I might want to do something else. So perhaps I'll increase the temperature a little bit, maybe adjust the contrast, up the highlights, go into Creative over here, and maybe we'll add a little bit of vibrance. And why we'll add it, come down to Vignette, and add a nice little vignette on this. The nice thing is that when it's layered this way, we can now enable or disable these layers at any point in time with a single click. So here it is with the Alexa LUT turned off, go back to Selective Color, we can disable those changes, we can add an additional Lumetri effect layer, and again, very easy to just navigate and move through the various layers here with absolute ease. So very glad to have layered Lumetri Color effects directly inside the Lumetri panel. You never have to go to the effects controls. The nice thing too is that you're going to see extreme performance benefits now when stacking these. Previously, in the current version, if you're layering multiple levels of Lumetri, you're probably seeing a little bit of a performance hit. This time around, you will not see that. It is unbelievably beautiful and smooth, elegant, and lovely. All right. So the next thing I'm going to show you here is actually my favorite feature coming across all of the apps in this next update. And these are 5 new reimagined curves for grading. Hue versus Sat, Hue versus Hue, Hue versus Luma, Luma versus Sat, and Sat versus Sat. And in doing this, some of you may remember that we had the Hue versus Saturation wheel, right? And this was effectively the same as that Hue versus Sat graph, but it was presented in a non-standard circular fashion. It wasn't very responsive. It was sort of hard to get in there and manipulate colors. And while you could have multiple touch points and do multiple grades in an image, it just wasn't very efficient. So in bringing new curves to Lumetri, we didn't just want to remove one that we heard from users they didn't love, but it was really a design problem. We wanted to redesign something that was not just curves that you already knew, but also make them a little more intuitive. Make people who are new to color grading be able to understand what's really happening, and to a seasoned colorist to give you a little something extra, a little something that makes the existing tech even better. So we're going to start with Hue versus Saturation here, where I simply want to brighten up some skin tones, saturate the skin tones, and maybe saturate that blue sky a little bit more. So I'm going to come over to my familiar Adobe eyedropper here, and I'm going to make a selection on her face. And when I do that, you're presented with 3 control points, the center one being the actual hue that I clicked upon. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain that hue so that I don't move it around. And when I drag this now north of the line, you can see how we are increasing the skin tone. And if I go south of the line, you can see how we are desaturating the skin tone. But take a look at the actual vertical line itself. Visually, we're giving you a representation as you go north. You can see it's more saturated in the oranges. And if we go south of the line, it's desaturated into white. So even if you didn't understand what hue versus sat meant, now you do. Oh, I see. Yep, this color, more of this color, or less. Okay? Simple, easy, intuitive. Let's take another control point here, maybe something in the sky. Again, same concept. Increase the saturation of the blues in the sky, decrease the saturation of the blues in the sky. Now this also presents something else which I absolutely love, and this is where, again, that design problem comes into play, because traditionally, if we were doing this on a traditional hue versus sat graph, dealing with reds and skin tone, you're typically fighting something like this, right? You're crossing the graph. This is normal. So again, as a non-colorist, this to me was quite daunting. It just never made sense to me. How do you get the reds right? Ugh. Well, again, in trying to reimagine the UX, the user experience of working with a familiar curve, our engineers added a nice little slider here, which will allow you to drag those reds, or any hue for that matter, into view much more elegantly, much more simply, right? Simple UX changes, reimagining a very familiar curve, okay? So that's hue versus sat. Let's skip ahead here to hue versus hue. So hue versus sat, adjusting saturation of a particular hue. Hue versus hue, adjusting the hue of an existing hue. And I thought it might be kind of cool to take the girls' dresses in the foreground, and you can see there's two other girls with these sort of magenta colored dresses. Maybe we could make the dresses all the same color. So I'm going to come over to my familiar eyedropper here. Let's go ahead and make a selection. Again, it gives us our control points, but once again, reimagining the design of this curve. Now when I click on this, now what do you see? Well, you see the hue ranges that you'll be moving towards. So again, if we go south of the line, we're moving towards the oranges, the yellows, and the greens. If we go north of the line, let me zoom back out so I can get the right hue, the right magenta, just like that. Go ahead and play it. Beautiful, simple, easy. Uninterrupted playback allows us to enable or disable any one of these modules at any point in time. It's so easy. So cool, right? Just like that. Hue versus hue. All right, I've got time to show you just one more here before we have to move on to other features. Hue versus luma. So again, adjusting the luminance value of a particular hue. And in this case, what we wanted to do was actually drop the luma, darken the blue in the sky, which would subsequently darken the blue reflection in the water, which would give us a little bit more color contrast. So I took my sample of that blue sky, which you can see here, and again, take a look at our graph. As we move north of this, right, we're brightening, we are increasing the luminance, but we want to decrease it, to darken it. And it shows you that visually, that we're going into black, all right? This is one of those curves that had been explained to me before in a specific grading app, and I just never quite, I understood what it meant, but I didn't understand how to really use it. But now you can see what it's doing, right? Truly reimagined curves for grading inside of Lumetri. All right, one more thing here in Premiere before we move over to After Effects. Talk a little bit about motion graphics templates. Now, Carl was just showing this moments ago if you were watching Carl Soleil present After Effects. And it's this idea of using motion graphics templates or having data-driven motion graphics templates. So as described, here we have a template that was created in After Effects, which is displaying, overlaid some very nice graphical elements here with some data over top of this video. Recurring dreams, 83% of women report recurring dreams, 44% of men. Okay. And inside the Essential Graphics panel here, the motion designer gave us only two manually editable fields. The values of those circular angles, we can adjust those here manually. But you see that there's this new spreadsheet option. So now, something that was added to After Effects previously, where you can drive an animation by leveraging data contained in a CSV or TSV file, you can now do this and use this in a motion graphics template, and you can repopulate that data into a template used in Premiere without having to type anything manually. This will make more sense in just a moment. Let's go ahead and try this right now. I'm going to click on Edit Spreadsheet Data, go into Browse. Let's go ahead and choose this data-driven graphic right here, CSV file. And when I do that, you see that the data has immediately swapped out. Lucid Dreams. And you'll see that inside this spreadsheet, there are a couple of text values, a title value, some color values, and then the actual, again, the angle adjust of the graphics here. Now, by default, because this is being fed from a CSV, it appears that these are not editable, but you can also override this by going into an unmapped mode, and instead of saying Lucid Dreams at home, we can say at IBC, click OK, and you see it instantly updates, all right? So this prevents me from the editor to having to sort of reconfigure the data. They could have given me editable text fields, but all this data is in a spreadsheet. Here's where this is going to make more sense. Here's where this becomes really useful, particularly if you work in broadcast. So, or really anywhere where you use things like lower thirds. I use lower thirds all the time. I'm always changing to whom I'm speaking, what their role is, where we are, right? So in this particular template, the designer did just that. They made 5 variations of this lower third. And they gave us a slider, which is controlled via an expression in After Effects, that lets us very quickly swap through them. That's awesome. We'll talk about these other controls in a moment. But there's more data to be had, and as I joked about earlier, although I was serious, someone says, okay, who's the next person? Who do we have to put in here? Imagine you're typing in this. Yes, her name is Kenyetta. My name is Jason. It's very easy to spell. Don't trust people spelling other people's names. Surely all of this data can be put into a CSV so that you, the editor, can just drag that data in and have it change and repopulate that motion graphic. Well, that's exactly what we've done. So here, once again, I can now browse. I can grab an additional lower third CSV, click open, and it switches out all the data. All right? So just imagine this. You can have hundreds of fields, and they can automatically re-auto-populate, and you still have your slider control, so we can still go through the next batch of names. But we don't have to type any of this. We don't have to do any of this manual work. By the way, this is also a live CSV being fed into a motion graphics template. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you are in a broadcast environment or in a post facility, and perhaps you have these Excel data files like stored on shared storage. Well, you can be in Excel, and if you make a change, it will automatically update on screen. Or more importantly, if someone you're collaborating with has this data sheet open and you're editing and they're changing values, it will change in front of your eyes. So if you are using something that's on a shared drive, you'll just want to lock these down because they are being fed live into Premiere. Super cool. And of course, if you override the settings that I showed you, then that won't apply in that case. Okay, so data-driven motion graphics templates in Premiere Pro. The other thing that I wanted to show you here, and I'll show you in After Effects, is that you now have editable font style, and other font controls, which you can now set from within After Effects for a motion graphics template. In the version that you have today, you cannot make the font editable in a motion graphics template that you give to a Premiere editor. It's locked. Now, in this next version, you will be able to choose if you want to allow the editor to change the font, change the style, change the size. Okay? And I'll show you that in just a moment. The other thing you'll also see, parameter grouping. Motion graphics templates can get very complex. Editors can motion graphics designers can give you hundreds of editable fields if they want, which today you'd have to scroll through to find. You will now be able to contain them in groups, which just makes the organization of it that much easier, that much more efficient. All right? Wonderful. Okay, there's so much more. VR 180 stereoscopic support, some new audio effects, display color management, among many other things, but we don't have enough time to cover them all. So let's go into After Effects and talk about depth passes. So essentially, what are depth passes? It's the ability now for you to create native 3D using our classic 3D engine or the Cinema 4D engine, and leveraging some effects that have lived in After Effects for a very long time, it will automatically create the depth channel for you. And all you have to do is pre-compose your 3D shape layers, illustration, whatever it is. Now, these 3D channel effects have actually lived in After Effects for quite a long time, but they had to be used in conjunction with 3D content that was built outside of After Effects that had to be built in a very specific way, and it just wasn't, again, very elegant or ideal, so they went largely unnoticed and unused. So here, a designer of ours, Mark Wolashuk, created these moving waveforms for us. We've pre-composed this into a new comp, and if we take a look under effects controls now, just by pre-composing, again, we add the 3D channel extract effect here. It will if there is 3D depth data present, it will automatically extract that. Towards the left there, the further it is away from the camera, the darker it is on screen. The brighter it is on screen, the closer it is to the camera. And we began adding some 3D effects, in this case, fog 3D, where we modified the color to kind of blend in with the background a little bit more. We then added, because this is further away, this should be blurred out, right? We want that depth of field effect, so that's been added as well. And then we used 2 instances of this depth matte to actually create a sort of wipe to reveal that. All of this created natively in After Effects. We didn't even have to go to C4D to do it. It's all done natively here with depth passes, right? Auto depth matte generation. And just to show you one additional step to this was using the classic 3D renderer. Here's an example. You know this was done with the C4D renderer because the text has extrusion applied to it. So that was one of the many benefits that we got with C4D. You now have native text extrusion for 3D objects and shape layers directly inside of After Effects as well. You don't have to go to C4D to create this. So similarly, we did the same thing here. We wanted to sort of augment that previous comp even more. All right. So here's our 3D channel extract effect. Again, this is very sharp. This should be blurred, a little depth of field, a little bit of hue saturation to blend into the background. And I won't bother playing this. This has to do a little bit of a pre-render here. It's quite heavy, but you can get the idea. All of this now created natively inside of After Effects. As someone who's always struggled a little with 3D, especially when it comes to depth and lighting and control, now I feel confident. My 3D illustration will still be crap, but it's going to look super 3D with lots of cool depth. Yeah? I feel your excitement. Thank you. Okay, one last thing here before we have to bounce over to Audition and then Character Animator, just because we were talking about text and motion graphics templates. I mentioned, again, the ability to change font and allow editors of your templates to be able to modify those properties. So here on this particular graphic, you can see that we have our text controls. And now when you add source text, so again, if we were to just solo our supported properties, come down here, here's our source text. When you drag that into the Essential Graphics panel, you will now have an Edit Properties button. And when you choose Edit Properties, this is where you can now say, okay, enable, for the person using this template, custom font selection. Enable font size adjustment, and enable faux styles. So when you click OK on that, you'll now see that all of those options are present. All right. Additionally, how do you add groups, as I showed you before? Down here at the bottom of Essential Graphics, add group. So when you create a new group, again, we can shrink these other ones up down here. You can begin adding content to it just by dragging over top of the group, and now it's contained inside the group. Okay? Super cool, super easy, really, really wonderful addition. One more thing here in After Effects, because we are talking about motion graphics templates, something that we actually borrowed from Premiere Pro, something that you could create in Premiere but was very difficult to do in After Effects today, responsive design time-based motion graphics templates. So you're building a template that has animation, and the first bit of animation has some visual graphical elements and some text. And you want this to always appear on screen over this, it's 20 frames, all right? And then there's another piece of the animation that comes on screen over 10 frames or 30 frames, whatever this is. And then you have another piece over here that we want to use. And that happens over 20 frames. And you want to preserve those animation durations in the template. Now, using my work area bar, if I have such animation durations that I want to preserve, I can simply right-click and I can choose Create Protected Region from Work Area. And when I do that, you'll see that we have these new marker regions, new colors, new icons. You can give it a little description here, ending, click OK. So now, when I go into my video that I would ultimately be using this on, perhaps in Premiere, I can take that motion graphics template, drag it down here, and now you can see that we actually see the protected regions with my label that I just added on that layer. But what if I want to elongate this, right? I want this to actually cover the whole video. Well, if I drag this out, what do you see? The durations of those protected regions has not changed. Now, if you have animation that exists in between these regions, that animation will get stretched or squeezed accordingly. But any animation that exists in the protected regions will always maintain that exact duration. So responsive design, time, elements for motion graphics templates, so excited to have this now in After Effects. Again, something which we had in Premiere first, now brought it into After Effects, which you can now leverage inside of templates that you create and potentially monetize as well. It's worth pointing out, if you didn't know, and for those watching on Facebook, hello, you too can become a motion graphics template contributor. Everybody is very aware, intimately aware of having that side hustle today. If you do motion graphics, if you create things that could be templates, you should be selling them on Adobe stock. I don't only say that as an Adobe employee. I say that as someone who actually buys a lot of motion graphics templates because I'm a terrible designer. So make some good ones for me and let me pay you. Let me share my joy and excitement with you. All right? Are you listening? They're listening. Okay. Wonderful. All right. On that note, very quickly, we've got 5 minutes until the amazing Mike Russell is going to come up and show you some new things in Audition. Real quickly, I'm going to show you two things. First and foremost, beautiful new UI. You may be looking here and thinking, oh, the colors, it's so vibrant and lovely. Yes, we've redone the entire color scheme here. We've changed the look of the tracks. We've even rounded the edges. We've also reconformed all the colors to more closely follow and match the ones in Premiere. So if you're using a dynamic link from Premiere into Audition, you'll have the same exact color applied to your clips as they exist there. You've got a whole new series of custom colors. They're more vibrant, they're more modern. The app will feel lighter and more awesome and infinitely faster because of lots of work to speed up playback and processing. Again, better video support, especially when coming through dynamic link, including having all of your various timecode and video preference options. These were actually added in the April release, but they all still apply here. Very, very wonderful. You're just going to find that the app just feels leaner and faster as you're zooming in and out and working inside of here. It's just truly, truly a wonderful experience. Again, building upon that UX concept here in Audition. One additional thing too, I'm going to point out because I'm going to let Mike talk about some of these other things. The tracks panel here, so cool. This allows you to change what is visible on screen. So if you only want to work on a series of different tracks, say the music and these first series of sound effects for sound design and the voiceover, you can go into the tracks panel and you can save that as a preset for track visibility. And this just gives me a nice, cleaner, easier way to work with 3 tracks or 4 tracks or 10 tracks at a time based on your screen real estate. Then I can go into the tracks panel and say, okay, show me everything, and I can bring everything back in. And leveraging our modified zoom out full control, there's everything again. So once again, I can go back to tracks here. I can load up my preset that we just created. There's my 3 tracks, sound effects, music, VO. Let's go back to showing everything, show all, and everything's back into view. So we know this from After Effects, you know it in Photoshop, just the ability to show and hide. It's all about just cleaning up that interface and improving the experience. Let you get your work done faster, get out, and make this. That's the symbol for money, I think. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you. Character animator. What is going on screen here? Well, this is me characterized as a stone creature using something called the characterizer. The characterizer allows you to take an image of yourself using your camera and microphone. And what it's going to do is it's going to have you say a couple of things, have you make a couple of expressions, and based on the things that you say and the expressions that you make, it is going to build a puppet of you that you can instantly animate inside of Character Animator. So here I am when I took the picture that you see there. It has you do a couple of faces, and then it has you say some words. And it's about 5 words. The whole process takes about 40 seconds or so. All right? From there, it's then going to ask if you want, how do you want to characterize yourself? I want to turn myself into a characterized version of George Washington, or that weird stone thing that you saw. Or maybe your favorite cartoon character. Make a version of you that looks like that. And in doing so, this is just a photograph that I took of the dollar bill. You then define the areas that contain face, hair, neck, clothing, etc. And once you do that, you can then morph yourself into the look and characterize yourself of any kind of image. So here's my face. We've already done that. Let's take one like maybe something. I keep trying to choose different ones here. What about this? Haven't tried this weird head one yet. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. And you'll notice you've got these stylization controls. So if you go to the left, it's going to stylize this more like me. If I go to the right, it's taking a little bit longer to render right now. It's putting the background in there. If I go to the right, it's really going to start to merge my face with that puppeted face down there. Let's go to another one here. Maybe we'll go to this wooden statue. Woodman, it's called, all right? Something like that. You've got feature exaggeration. If you go to the right, it'll narrow out the features. If you go to the left, it'll widen the facial features. Let's go somewhere in the middle here, because that looks terrifying. And I'm going to back off the stylization. You also have something here called cycles. And cycles will create movement. Anyone, if you remember, there was a cartoon years ago called Dr. Katz, and they had something called squiggle vision, which always seemed like the character was moving, even when it wasn't talking. Well, cycles will do just that. It'll give you this constant motion, even when you're not speaking, all right? So once you stylize your character the way you want, you simply click on Generate Puppet. And based on the words that you said, where it captured your mouth movements, it also generated the visemes, right? This is the AI tech, the Adobe Sensei technology that automatically allows you, using your microphone, to detect the proper animated mouth shape for all the words and sounds that we say. It will build an animated puppet for us in just a moment. So it's doing the expressions right now. Here it comes, doing it live for you. Wait for it. I'm going to set my rest pose. And just like that, now I've got this version of myself animated and talking with that stone puppet. A couple of, I can add my frown face in there. I can blink my eyes with some keyboard shortcuts. But of course, it's tracking my face live at all times using the After Effects face tracker. So this character didn't really have defined eyebrows, but it's moving that... You get the idea. I don't want to spend too much time here. We've got to bring Mike up. In any case, my friends, Characterizer in Character Animator. We've also got something new called Replays, also something called Magnets. We showed you responsive design, time, motion graphics, templates, and After Effects, new text options, depth passes via depth mats, VR 180 support, new audio effects and filters in Audition, tracks panel, new UI, color grading options, stackable Lumetri color, 5 new color curves, and these are just some of the incredible innovations coming to the next version of the video and audio products. Thank you so much for watching. Stick around for Mike Russell, who's going to talk about Audition, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.